What's up, guys? It's Chris. Welcome to VHBN's. I guess VHBN's is in a way from the break room. Alright. Fuck, whatever. Anyway, it's just a little weird because my camera filter sucks dick, so the glare, trying to avoid it, but whatever. Not going to be able to, I guess. Anyway, so this is going to be one of those kind of bigger videos that's just like a whole bunch of, or maybe not a whole bunch, but just different things talked about, not really one specific thing. I guess the thing I'll start off with is going to be like the main topic, and then from there you guys can just cut it off if you don't want to listen anymore. But the main thing I want to talk about is, it should be pretty quick. The other day I made a real short video about, you know, the 500 wheel horsepower mark, and it can be done on pump. So Jeffrey hopped in and gave his stance on what is the potential hazards and problems with trying to push an engine into the 500s with just pump gas. And so I just kind of want to paraphrase what I said and add some stuff to it, because it you know, it's one of those things that, you know, when the topic is brought up, it's like, oh well, here I can clearly add to that, and probably something that I could have talked about. And again, like, I find myself doing a whole bunch recently. It's things that I've covered, but just covered in separate places. So I would have to kind of redo the video. But at the same time, it did cover in really quickly what I wanted to cover. So and the comment and my response is there for you to go see if you wanted to. But just in the case that you didn't or whatnot, you know, or just to bring attention to it, because I know most people are going to view once and never go back. And then there's a lot of people who view and then don't read comments. So the situation was, for me, like, you know, like, he's like, you know, people potentially blame engine builder or blame the tuner when the engine fails, when it's really from detonation, for you know, just like a whole bunch of different reasons why it can be bad to tune on with that kind of fuel. And for me, it was like, well, it's a very simple one, because one of the things he says, if you don't mind, you know, throwing away money to doing multiple engine builds or whatnot, I'm like, well, yeah, for me, definitely that's not a problem, because I generally don't have to spend as much money or nowhere near as much money as where most people would, because I do my own work. So if I were to lose an engine for whatever reason, it's not a big deal for me. And it's like, oh, okay, I have 3 at any point in given time of almost every series. No, that's a stretch. But I have multiple engines where I can literally just go and pick one up from my back room and just throw another one in. So it's not a big deal for me, which I've said a lot of times too when I talk about things. Like, I'm not against doing crazy experiments, because it's not a big deal for me to lose. I'm like, oh, well, I know I can't do that, or I know I shouldn't do that, or maybe it was a different kind of mistake and then just try again. But the thing is, being that I have the means to not freak out over it. Like, just to go say, my very first high horsepower car that I owned, at one point in time I had an accident, and I thought I fucked it up, and I freaked out because I spent a whole bunch of money to get where I was, and there's no way I could afford to do that again. So I understand what he means about not taking risks and chances like that. So anyway, what I said was, first off, was it's not a big deal for me to lose an engine. I may not have said that, but that's the first thing. It's not a big deal for me to lose an engine. Secondly, was the video wasn't an encouragement to say, hey guys, just go tune on pump. I gave my reasons for why I only tune on pump, and then I also said that the whole purpose of the video was, can it be done? And has it been done often? And the answer to that, both of those, is yes, it can be done. Plenty of people do it. And I would say I've seen it quite often. It's not just where I said in Evans Tuning's old catalog, but I see all the time, because I follow tuners and I follow builds, because I'm nosy. As much as my guesses on power levels are consistent, I think, you know, and I've learned over the years to what to expect from what mods and from what tuner, you know, I still like to see as many cases as possible, because there's, you know, you just see as many things. Plus, you know, I like to watch the tuner specifically, because then you get a baseline for what they're capable of, or their style of tuning. So there's that, and then another thing was me saying, like, kind of follow into that, is, yeah, I'm in South Florida, where I have a plethora of tuners down here, and I have a good understanding of which tuners are capable of what, and which ones of those are very reputable, and I also know which one to go to for what power level. Now, with that being said, Another thing that I want to clarify, which again I've said in other places, didn't say in that last video, is that at the end of the day, 500 is a goal for me, but it's not a big deal if it doesn't hit 500. So the whole thing is just to listen to your tuner. Listen to what your tuner's telling you. Don't be like, just push it. You know, I mean, whatever. If you don't care to see your shit blow up, and you must see a certain number from that car, then whatever. If you're telling them to push it, then a lot of times the tuner will be like, okay, well, I told you, so I'm going to go ahead and do what you're asking. Me personally, I'm not a tuner, and I probably never will. I would like to play around with a dabble, but even if I did learn how to do some shit, you know, even if I ever got to the point where I could competently tune, I would never do it for other people. It would only be myself that I would do it for. You know, because I'll never own, plus I'll never own a dyno, so it's, you know, I just don't ever see myself doing that, trying to make money off that. That's just not my thing. So I have goals that I would like to see, and I have goals that, you know, that I would like to see that is realistic, that I think that is realistic for me to expect those kind of numbers, you know. So there's that. You know, like, is it realistic for me to see these numbers? Sure. You know, would I really like to see these numbers? Yes. If my guy is telling me when I'm rolling, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, am I going to listen? Yeah, I'll listen to the tuner. I'm like, hey, okay, fine. If you think we can't do it, it's not something that's doable, not a big deal. I think, like with this B16 I had, I said 450 was the goal. I was making 420 when I came in. It's okay. So that's a story from a whole other time. I drove from El Paso to Miami. I was making 420 when I left El Paso. I went in for just a checkup to see how the car was performing. I lost almost all my power because the elevation changed. 4,500 feet above sea level to sea level, I was making 180 wheel horsepower. It was crazy. So in the retuning process, I said I would like to see 450, and I wound up making 440. And in later discussion, he was like, yeah, I think if I would have tweaked the RPMs a little bit, if I would have raised the red line up a little bit more, we could have definitely seen the peak number of 450. And at the end of the day, what does it matter? It was 10 horsepower. And the car was plenty fast. And, you know, and even then, like, I had a built valve train with, you know, and I could have revved out higher, so it wouldn't have been a big deal. I think at the time I was only revving to 8.5. But anyway, the whole point is like, you know, listen. So to clarify, with, like I said with him, was like, I want to see 500, but if I only see 450, it's not a big deal because it's a 50 horsepower difference, and we're talking about fractions of a second when it comes to like overall speeds and times, and quarter mile times and whatnot. And it's 50 horsepower at that level of power is almost negligible. Like, you're not going to tell the difference between the 450 and the 500. I feel confident in saying. And then with that being said, I said at that point, 450 horsepower is like retarded easy on pump. And I know because every single piston and rod block, you know, engine that I put together is made at least 450, unless it was unless we're talking about a tune that was deliberately cut short to be conservative, or because the turbo just wasn't big enough to get to where there was big, you know, combination of turbo plus engine size and all that good stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to, you know, just to clarify that, you know, again, you know, it's doable, 500 horsepower doable on pump, yeah, and I still would like to see that, but at the end of the day, it's not a big deal for me if I don't see it, and I'm not going to I'm not going to go against whatever the tuner gives me. Like, whatever the numbers are, and he's saying this is a good place to stop, then that's where we'll stop. At the end of the day, I'm making more than 400. That's the only key thing, and I know if anything, you know, but that 400 to 450 range is very doable with just about any engine I'm going to put together, and the turbo sizes that I tend to use. So there's that. Also, just a real quick update on the 8-day situation, April 6th and 7th. I just bought my ticket today, so that's locked in 100%. Yeah, I said the other day I think that I could fly direct to Mechanicsville. That's not the case. You know, it's actually a pain in the ass. It's I got to go to the Baltimore, Washington D.C. International Airport, which is 66 miles from the raceway, the racetrack. So what's most likely going to happen is I'm going to get down, because I'm going to fly in the day before. I'm going to fly in the 5th, or the night of the 5th, and probably just take an Uber. There was, you know, getting the scheduling the flight and whatnot. There was the option to reserve a rental car and whatnot. But based on my recent Uber experience and what the rates were for the rental car, it was actually going to play out being cheaper for me to Uber than it was for me to rental. They were selling some cheap rentals for like $30, right? But then you got to think there's fuel, insurance, the tax that they're not going to show you up front. So I could easily see it turning out to be, $100 at a minimum for what would amount to be a day and a half, 2 days. So Uber, generally speaking, for that kind of mileage, I would expect to spend around $60, $70, and in that way, I won't be driving. So, there's the crossing the fingers, hoping that I don't get a fucking weirdo to get trapped in the car for that amount of time. But yeah, so that's most likely what I'm gonna do. Is I'll get to the airport, hop in an Uber, go to a small hotel in the nearby area, and there's gonna be that. So yeah, 8th day is 100% official on for me going up there for the April event. I gotta buy the actual 8th day tickets themselves, but that's not a big deal. I'll probably buy those at the gate. Plus another thing I was considering with the whole 8th day situation is that I've seen some old videos from years past, and like the insane amount of wait time just to get into the gate. And I'm like, well, if I'm taking an Uber, I'm literally getting dropped off, So it'd be like I would get up to the fucking racetrack, I'm getting dropped off in the Uber, and I'm just walking through. So the need for me to worry about a line is immediately gone. The last race event I went to was Formula D last year. It was last year? Yeah, it was last year. Formula D last year in Orlando. And getting in wasn't so bad of a wait, but holy fuck, on the way out on the second day, it took like 2 hours, and it was fucking blazing hot out, and I seriously underestimated the low amount of fuel I had in my car at the time. I think I had a quarter tank, but by the time we were pulling out, like right at the last minute, like we were finally getting to the point where we could leave and get to the main road, my gas light was on. So yeah, that's just little things like that, that I won't have to worry about if I take the Uber. So at the end of the day, my recent car troubles, which led me breaking my Uber cherry, wasn't a bad thing. So another thing, I've mentioned it a bunch of times, because I know that there's a handful of you guys that actually follow me on my personal Facebook. So you see me ranting, I've been talking about it recently, and before eventually I bought the Toyota CHR that I got last week. So just a quick rundown on what happened there. I had codes, I troubleshot, everything was pointing to do this repair, and I wound up having like a nightmare scenario. So I bought that Civic, the EK. All right, so I bought the EK, and literally 8 days after I got it, the transmission went out. So I fucking checked the dipstick on the transmission. It was double full, and it looked dark. The fluid was dark. So I'm thinking, okay, this isn't transmission fluid. This is crazy. But a friend of mine, he's telling me like there's a trick you can get to expand the fluids to have the gears grab on a little bit longer. It's like an emergency thing to help the transmission grab, just to extend a little bit of life when it's already on its way out. That brake fluid does that. So I'm thinking that's what happened. That somebody just opened it up, dumped the fucking bottle of Dot 3 in that bitch, and that's why it's dark as fuck. And that's why it's also doubly full, because they doubled up the fluid by not draining anything, just added the Dot 3 in there. So anyway, that car got sold. Like I bought it for $1,000. I posted it for sale once I realized what the situation was with the transmission being gone, and I posted for $500. A friend bought it who did the auto to manual conversion because he had a car that's been down for a very long time for electrical problems, so he just used that as a donor to move parts over to the sedan. And the sedan, like I told you guys, when I was talking about it, it's clean. So and I even told him there's a very good chance that in the next year or so, if you still have the car, and I think there's a strong possibility that he does, that I'll buy the fucking car back, because then it would be a 2000 EK sedan that's manual, which is something I really wanted, just not the opportune time for me to get it. So there's that, right? And so I sold the car. And then I was like, all right, well, let me try and take a look at the Sonic again, my wife's daily, our daily, let me see if I can fix this thing. So a friend brings a code scanner, I read the codes, and like I said, start going down the rabbit hole, and I found, okay, so these are the issues that are common with this car, and these should be the replacement things I should do. So I'm getting ready to go to work for a meeting, and I had to go early. It was like I had to be there like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I called a dealer to make sure to see if they had the parts, and the guys told me they had the parts. And I was like, well, only while I'm at it, while I'm talking to you guys, like, how much is labor? And it was a 30-minute job they quoted me for, and they're like, okay, so $70. I'm like, well, shit, $70, 30-minute job. I was like, I'll tow my car to you guys, you can work on it, and then my wife can go with the tow truck driver, and then when the car's done, she could literally take it to pick me up from work. And I was like, well, I'll definitely pay $70 to have that done. So we tow the car over, and like on the way back home, you know, I'm in the Uber and I get a phone call from the dealer, and the dealer's like, hey man, we can't work on your car today. We're gonna do it tomorrow. And I was like, okay, fine, you know, whatever. That's no big deal. So okay, so like I had an Uber, right, because my wife had told me that the dealer is calling for some whatever reason. It took me a while to get a hold of him, but in the meantime of waiting, because I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get picked up, I just got the Uber. Then they told me we can't work on the car today. We'll do it tomorrow. So I get in the Uber and I leave. By the time I get back to my house, the dealer calls me again, like, hey man, your car's a rebuilt, you know, rebuilt title. We don't work on those. We can't work on your car. I was like, okay, fine, fuck. So, but the problem is, you know, the tools I needed to do the job were at work. So it became like a fucking nightmare. Like I had to get another Uber to go to the dealer to buy the parts, which wound up racking up to be about $360. And then call a tow truck driver again to pick up the car that was there, tow it back to the house, and then take another Uber from the dealership after buying the parts back to work to pick up the tools I needed, and then Uber back home again. I think between buying the parts, the tow truck, and just the Uber rides, it wound up being like a $500+ day. And now, so I imagine I was pretty pissed because, like I've been saying, guys, you know, I've been doing pretty good about stashing money away. And I'm seeing, you know, I spent $1,000 in this car that I had for a week, and then I got $500 back out of it. And then now here I am spending money again. And then the tow truck driver bullshitted all day, you know, like for hours, you know, waiting for me. Because mind you, I still had to go to a regular shift that night. You know, so I'm waiting for the tow truck driver to get here. I'm hoping I can swap out the parts real quick and the car will be drivable. Turns out that wasn't the case. The car comes in, I swap out the parts, and still having the issue. I was like, okay, so there's only one more thing I had to replace the sensor, and I'm not 100% sure that's going to make any difference either, you know, but whatever. So I go to work, I ignore it, I wait a couple more days, income tax money comes, I use that, I go to CarMax, I was like, hey, this is the car I want. They pull up fucking, you know, do a quick credit check, look at my annual income, and they're like, okay, yeah, you're good, you're approved. So that's why I got the car. It was just easier at the end of the day, and the car had like 18,000 miles on it. I was like, okay, good, we're good with that. And also in the process, you know, it's kind of like making conversation. We mentioned the troubles we were having, and one of the guys working there knows somebody in some company, some shit they claim they can help us get out of the Sonic. So that's what's going to happen. So yeah, so no, it didn't happen. I didn't crash the car or anything like that. It just had a string of problems or multiple failures that, you know, it's just having all kinds of issues. And when I get to the point of I've already spent $400 on parts for the car that did nothing, I don't want to spend any more. I don't have money like that to be, you know, be just throwing parts at the car. And as far as troubleshooting, the troubleshooting says to do what I did, and it didn't work. So for me to continually throw anything else at it at this point would be fucking retarded. Especially when we already got a new car. So we're going to see about getting on with that. And anyway, so I just told you guys that because I mentioned several times that I was going to talk about it at length. And there's some of the videos that I was going to make that I was going to talk about it. It didn't happen. So when I had these couple little topics to touch on right now, I figured this would be an opportune time to do so. And that's it for anybody that was curious about that. So yeah, I'm going to be taking the trip to Honda Day. And I'm very much looking forward to meeting a lot of people. Hopefully, maybe I can even meet some subscribers. That channel is big in my opinion, but still tiny on the large scale of events and things. So if I see nobody, I wouldn't be surprised. I expect at the very least to see Irvin, so that's a big thing for me too. So meeting Irvin is just about as important as meeting the other guys that I'm going up there to see. So that's happy things. I'm going to be there for both days, but I'm going to be leaving early, most likely before the event ends on Sunday, because I played with the, you know, I gambled like the things. All right, so for me to stay there for the whole day, for me to stay for the whole event, it was just, I was gonna have to stay over another night. So we're talking about another night staying at a hotel, and I couldn't justify that. Plus, you know, it being inconveniencing my wife for work. So I figured I'll fly back the night of the Sunday, and the only time I could do that is 8 o'clock at night. Now, the fact that the trip is 66 miles away to get to the airport, you know, you want to get to an airport especially one of any kind of size, with plenty enough time to be able to go through all your, all the security and whatnot, and be able to get to the gate. So I figure if the flight boards around 8 o'clock at night, I will probably leave. Probably be leaving Honda Day on the second day around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'll be there the entirety of the first day and until the later afternoon on the second. Now, of course, that's always subject to change. If there's a valid and legit reason for me to stay longer, then it's completely possible that I do so. The ticket was extremely cheap. I was able to find Spirit Airlines that does a direct flight there in just a couple hours, and I think the total round trip was only $130. So if I have a legit reason to stay for whatever reason, then it would be no big deal for me to miss a flight and buy a one-way ticket through Spirit for the following day for $50. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, this trip is going to be clutch on what I'm going to do for the rest of the year. Whether I'm going to, I want to go to World Cup Finals, but again, I don't want to fly out to an event just to be at the event. The whole thing is to be able to speak with everybody and talk to everybody and all that stuff, and be able to hang out. And if it goes good and then I get accepted into the fucking group and we all, and I stick around, then that's great. Then I'll continue to go out to some of these bigger events. It's plus, it's almost like going to a movie by yourself. It's almost weird and creepy. Like, you don't want to go out to a damn movie theater and just sit and just watch something yourself, unless it's something like you've been anticipating for so long and you're not going to miss it, or you're not going to wait. You have to go, even if you have to go alone. But race events aren't like that for me. Like, I do enjoy them and they are a fun experience, but there's enough stuff that happens in Florida alone where I wouldn't have to necessarily go to another state and pay for a plane ticket just to see it. So I'm hoping everything goes good. I don't see why it wouldn't, and hopefully it'll be like a regular thing for me to go out during the year. It's not as long as I'm not flying to an isolated airport in the mountains like I am with my hometown. It's not very expensive. Now, mind you, like it's a 900-mile trip to Mechanicsville to go there for me, but I think it's around the same distance to go from my hometown that's in West Virginia, and the plane ticket to go there is $500 because there's a stop layover because you have to get on a smaller plane to make it to that tiny ass airport. Anyway, yeah, so I'm done. I'm at work, and it's going to take forever to upload, so, yeah. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and talk to y'all soon. Peace.